Hey backpackers, this is Juan from Juan Backpacks. I'm here today to respond to a comment that was put on one of my videos, my John Muir Trail daily food plan video. It was a food plan for each day, like the calories and what we would eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner during our through hike, northbound through hike of the John Muir Trail that we did back in July. That video was made before we left. It was just kind of like our calculation on calories and nutrition and so forth for a day. It didn't really go into any detail on the resupply plan, like the food resupply plan. And I got one of the comments that said, hey, why don't you make a video about resupplying? And I'm gonna do that. But first I need to let you know, our resupply plan was a bit unconventional, and it probably would make some people uncomfortable because it is kind of pushing the limits and kind of relying on certain things to happen. And so I'm going to put this out here with a grain of salt, use it as kind of an idea. It'll give you some information if you're going to do normal resupplies. And towards the end is where the unconventional part comes in on the northbound hike. So I want you to know that right up front. Also, I've got some notes here with some miles and some averages and stuff like that. Please do your own calculations and estimate your own days, how many days you're going to be on trail, because your mileage may differ. And also I noticed that apps measure miles differently. I've been on hikes where one guy's got 10 miles in his app that we went so far, and another guy's got like 7 or 8 miles, and we started from the same point and we're at the same point. So how is it different, right? So basically, I'm saying like use your own app, use your own maps to figure out miles, because my miles may vary between points. And the averages I calculated, obviously not a math teacher, so maybe my averages are off. So do your own averages and stuff like that if you're going to really get that nitty gritty about how you do your food plan and plan things out. So the other thing I think you need to know is some particulars about our through hike. It was a northbound through hike of the John Muir Trail. We did 22 total days of hiking, 24 days with the 2 0 days added in. We did 1 0 day to resupply at Onion Valley, and we went into Independence, another 0 day at VVR, just because we thought it'd be cool to do a 0 day at VVR, and it was. So I might talk a little bit about that too along the way. So that's the particulars about the trail. I also say that we had unlimited time too. Not unlimited time, but I had a whole month. I could have taken as many days as I wanted. And you'll notice like our highs and lows go up and down quite a bit. Like days hiked, like certain mileages are high, certain mileages are low. The reason for that is that we really based our camp spots not on like historical, like, oh, this is beautiful here, or this is beautiful here. It's really based on fishing. And so if we thought, we were looking at maps and we thought a creek looked, promising, that's where we planned to hike. So, and each day we would kind of look at our miles based on our plan, and then we would say like, this looks like it'd be good fishing, we'll hike here, and then the next day we just do this, right, to make up for it or whatever. So we had some ups and downs with our mileage, so your mileage may vary a little bit, but at least this will give you some idea how we map things out with our resupply. So let me get started here while my cat is visiting. Basically, we started out on day 1 of the hike with 7 days to go 6 days. 7 days of food in our bear cans to go 6 days. And those bear cans were pretty packed. We were starting at Cottonwood Pass, and we would exit for our first resupply at Onion Valley Trailhead. That worked out perfectly because we went 65.9 miles. Over those 6 days, we averaged 11 miles per day. High day was 15 miles. That was the day we summited Whitney out of Crabtree Meadow and back. And then the lowest mile day was 5.1. That's where we had positioned ourselves really close to Kearsarge Pass so we could get out Onion Valley early in the morning, like by 9 a.m. to be able to get down to the post office and take a 0 day in Lone Pine. We wanted to have like the through hiker experience of a town day, and that was like the best place, and we were interested in that town, so we're like, let's just do it 6 days in, and that way we've done it, right? So we did it then. Basically, once we got to the trailhead at Onion Valley, we hitched a ride into Independence to the post office, where I'd sent a resupply about 3 weeks before to the post office. I knew we could do that general delivery with my name on it. I literally called, and I recommend that you do that. Call the post office you're going to send the resupply to, just to check to see what their requirements are and what they believe you should do if you're going to send it general delivery and have them hold it. And so that's what I did, just to double check everything, because I'm a planner. I put actually white labels on all 4 sides of each box. I had 7 days of food in each box, 7 days for my son, 7 days for me. And I put my name, expected date of pickup, based on my hiking plan, and then this, basically says through hiker resupply, just so they knew if I was late or whatever, that I was a through hiker. I think they would hold it like up to 30 days anyway once they get it, but I just wanted to make sure. So I sent that out to them ahead of time. I think it was like 3 weeks ahead of when we pick it up, and it was there when we got there, and it worked out perfectly. We took our 0 day and then headed back on trail. I think as far as resupply goes at Onion Valley, some other options would be, one would be to send it to a pack station at Onion Valley. There's a pack station there. I did look at that as an option. I can't remember the official name of the pack station, but there is a fee for them handling it, and you have to pick it up. And that would be great if you're just going to get off trail real quick and then head back on trail if you're limited time. But we weren't limited to time. I wanted to have that 0 day through hiker town day, and so that was what we did. But definitely, one of the guys we were hiking into Kearsarge Lakes with that went out the same day, he had limited time, so he was just going out to the pack station, picking up his resupply, and then, hey cat, and then he was going to head back on trail and keep hiking. So the other option would be, now that my cat's distracting me, my other resupply would be, the option would be just to shop in Lone Pine. If you're going to do a 0 day there, you could have easily, at the grocery store and stuff, I mean, they have the backpacker food. Well, there is in Lone Pine, there is a backpacker store in there, an outdoor store that has backpacking food, like Mountain House, stuff like that. But if you want like the stuff that we did, which is not the Mountain House stuff, we went cheaper. The packaged, ramen and, the North Sides and tuna packs and stuff like that. They have it in Lone Pine in the grocery store. So we could have easily have done that. I didn't have confidence in that at that time because I hadn't seen it. But now that I've seen it, and if I was to do it again, I probably wouldn't even mail those resupplies. I'd just do it in town. One thing we did do there in town of Lone Pine is that we decided in the first 6 days that we weren't going to cook breakfast anymore. And we were actually skipping breakfast because we wanted to get started hiking every morning. And that wasn't necessarily a good thing for the hike, but we decided we would quit doing the breakfast in the morning, or not do the breakfast, because it just took too much time to leave camp, and that we'd just eat breakfast bars on the way out. So we actually left all of our breakfast stuff in a hiker box in town at a hostel, and then we bought some breakfast bars at the grocery store, and it worked out great. So we hopped back on trail at Onion Valley, and our next resupply would be at Muir Trail Ranch 6 days later. And we hopped back on trail with 7 days of food each. And so we were able to hit that mark. We did a flyby of Muir Trail Ranch on our way to Sanger Creek because we didn't want to stop at Muir Trail Ranch because it was like too early in the day. We knew we were going to get there early in the day, and we wanted to cover more miles that day. So we just it took an hour or so to resupply and then just headed out of Muir Trail Ranch on our way. So to do that flyby in 6 days was 76.9 miles. We did an average of 12.8 miles a day, and we did a high day of 15.6, and a low day was 9.8, which was the last day when we did the flyby. We got ourselves really close to Muir Trail Ranch so that when we got in there, we had time to do the resupply and time to hike out and cover some miles that day. So when we got to Muir Trail Ranch, you can send them a bucket, a 5-gallon bucket with resupply in it. They have really detailed instructions for doing that. I'd recommend you read them and follow them to the T because they're very detailed what they want to do, what they want you to do. They recommend certain carrier. You can print out once you pay for the resupply fee, like them handling it. I think it's around $80 or so for them to handle your bucket. And they only do it during certain date ranges in the year. Like they start at a certain time, end at a certain time. So you want to check all that stuff ahead of time on their website, and it's the Muir Trail Ranch. You can print, once you pay, a label that you need to stick on your bucket in a certain way on a certain spots, and do some other things with the bucket, and then you can send it to them. My son and I, we packed 7 days apiece, 14 days of food into that resupply bucket, and we mailed it out there. They recommend you mail it out, I think, at least 2 weeks ahead of time before you want to pick it up, but we did it farther in advance than that, and it worked out great. So when we got to Muir Trail Ranch, you can pick up your resupply bucket, which we did. We actually had too much food at that point because we had some food left over. And so we got rid of some food in the hiker bucket, not very much though. And we added the 7 days apiece. So we had 7 days of food in our buckets. We actually used the charging station to charge our battery banks so that we could keep our inReach charged, our watches charged on the trail, and our phones charged on the trail. And also they had a little camp store there where you could buy like camping items, like especially canister stove, fuel. And so we bought our canister for fuel because we were starting to run a little bit low on fuel for our stoves. You can't get restaurant food there at Muir Trail Ranch, and you can't buy food at Muir Trail Ranch. So we headed out of there again with 7 days of food packed in bear cans. At that point, we would have a total of 10 days. This is where the non-traditional thing, unique way of we did it starts. We'd have 10 days to get out to the terminus at Happy Isles. So we were 10 days away from the finish, and we had 7 days of food. Doesn't make sense, does it? We're short 3 days of food, and usually we buffer by 1 day, right? So what we did know is that 2 days out from Muir Trail Ranch, we'd get to VVR. 3 days out from Muir Trail Ranch, we would get to Red's Meadow. I'm sorry, 3 days out from VVR, we would get to Red's Meadow. And then 3 days out from Red's Meadow, we would get to Tuolumne Meadows. And then 2 days out from Tuolumne Meadows, we'd get to Happy Isle. So 10 days, but we had 3 stops along the way that all had a camp store with food, like backpacker style food too. So what I did ahead of time, like when I was mailing out all my resupplies, I called each one of those stores. I called Vermilion Valley Ranch, I called Red's Meadow store, and I called Tuolumne Meadows. And I asked them about their food, just a general idea, not of what they had, and what their supply looked like. And at that point, their supplies looked really good. I had a pretty high confidence level that we'd at least be able to piece together the 3 days of food we were going to need to finish out. And so we went for it, knowing we'd be a little bit short on food. And that really meant we wouldn't have to carry a lot of food out of MTR, really. And so that worked out well. In 2 days out of MTR, we got to Vermilion Valley Ranch, and we literally did 17.9 miles to get there in 2 days, an average of 8.9 miles to get there. We literally got there so early in the day for breakfast, as a matter of fact, on that second day. Literally got there for breakfast because we left at dark. We didn't have to burn any of our food that day, right? So we had 7 days of food. We burned 1 day of food, getting there. And then we ate at Vermilion Valley Ranch, and we took a 0, so we didn't eat anything that next day either. So literally, we still had 6 days of food left when we hit Vermilion Valley Ranch. And we ate all meals there, spent a 0 day, ate all meals there. So we only really kind of looked at breakfast again, and I found some breakfast drink, like the dry breakfast drink, and there was plenty of stuff. We could have resupplied a couple, 2-3 days of food there to get to the next point anyway, because we were only 3 days from Red's Meadow when we were at Vermilion Valley Ranch. So there was enough food in the store, literally the camp store, to get to Red's Meadow. We could have bought enough food to get there. So we had 6 days of food. All we did was like maybe supplement. Like I got rid of some of my breakfast bars, and then I added that breakfast drink, and it actually ended up being better than the breakfast bars. I liked it a lot more. So anyway, we left there with about 6 days of food, and then we headed to Red's Meadow, which would take us 3 days with 6 days of food. We had 35.4 miles to go to get to Red's Meadows. We did an average of 11.8 miles per day. High day was 12.2. Low day was 11.2. Of those 3 days, we burnt 2 days of food of the 6 days, right? So now we're down to 4 days of food when we hit Red's Meadow. Because on the third day, we hiked those 11 miles and got there for breakfast. So we woke up early again and literally did 11 miles before 10 o'clock in the morning. And we woke up like at dark 30 and just started hiking. And because that's what our goal was, to get there in time for breakfast. And we did. So we got to Red's Meadow. Again, we only burnt 2 days of our 6 days of food we had. So now we're down to 4 days of food, which is more than enough to get to Tuolumne Meadows on day, in 3 days out of, Tuolumne Meadows is 3 days from Red's Meadow, and we literally have 4 days of food. So we got 4 days of food to get 3 days down the trail. So at Red's Meadow, we really didn't need to do anything. And all we did with our food at that point was, because we really only used 2 days of food to get there, what we did was we ate breakfast, lunch, and dinner at Red's, and we were going to leave the next day. We weren't going to do a 0 day at Red's. We went through the camp store. Once again, we just kind of like, oh, here's a snack, throw it in the bear bucket. The nice thing is now we're down to 4 days of food, so our packs are getting a lot lighter, and we added some stuff. Actually, added some stuff from the hiker box too, some food too from the hiker box. And so we left there probably to get to Tuolumne Meadows in 3 days. We left there with probably 4 days of food, something like that. Probably more than that, 5 days of food, I'd say, by the time we went through the hiker box and stuff. And then basically, it's nice to have lower days in our hiker or our bear cans. And then so basically, we walked out of Tuolumne Meadows, and knowing that we only had 2 days to get to. We walked out of Red's Meadow, knowing we had 3 days to get to Tuolumne Meadows, and we had about 4+ days of food in our in our bear cans. To get to Tuolumne Meadows, it took us 36.1 miles. We did 12 miles a day average on those 3 days. High day was 14.2. Last day was 11.5 miles. And once again, we actually woke up early in the morning and got to Tuolumne Meadows, so we only burned 2 days of food, and we ate a day of food at Tuolumne Meadows that day. We ate breakfast, lunch, and dinner there. Or no, maybe we used I think I ate breakfast that third day, so I really only had to refill my breakfast. So we really had, at least 2 days of food when we hit Tuolumne Meadows left in our bear cans. And then at that point, we just filled in. They had plenty of stuff in their store, all kinds of backpacker style food that we could have put in our bear cans. And we basically left there with 3 days of food in our, filled in, left with 3 days of food from the store at Tuolumne Meadows. You can also do a resupply at Tuolumne Meadows because they do have a post office there you can send a resupply to. Red's Meadow also handles resupply, so you could do it there. I forgot to mention that. Handles resupply. And also VVR, Vermilion Valley Ranch, handles resupply. So we could have sent resupply to all 3 of those places, but we chose not to because we just relied on the camp stores based on our research ahead of time. Again, it's going to be uncomfortable for some people doing this and winging it this way, but between the camp store that we pretty much were fairly certain would have stuff that could get us through to the next place, and the hiker boxes, which were very minimal because of COVID anyway, but people were still putting stuff in there. We knew we could do it. So out of Tuolumne Meadows, we basically carried 3 days of food to get 2 days, to go 23.4 more miles, and we finished up the trail. So that's how we did our resupply. You can see at the end we were winging it because we had 7 days to do 10 days. But the bottom line is we only at that point needed to fill in 3 days of food. And the reality is, if all 3 of those stores are running on a northbound through hike, it's going to be really easy to fill in 3 days of food. It really would be. And if you end up hiking more days between those distances, and our distances, you can tell from the miles, aren't real extreme. Again, we were fishing and taking our time. You know, we were stopping short miles. Sometimes we were stopped at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and started, you know, setting up camp so we could go fishing. And so, you know, and there were hikers who just kept hiking, you know, and so you could really cut some of those days out that we did. But, you know, I would personally feel comfortable doing what we did again, like sending 7 days for 10 days, and maybe even shaving that down a little bit if I felt like hiking faster, not fishing. And, you know, but again, the key here, I did my research ahead of time with the camp stores, and I called them and asked them what kind of items they had, just some examples, you know. I didn't make them run through a complete list of their stock or anything like that, and then what their supply was looking like and what their supply chain was looking like, getting stuff in, and everybody seemed to be doing really good. And honestly, when I hit those stores, you know, VVR was pretty well stocked, not a lot of variety there, pretty minimal. But Red's Meadow was better, and you know, because they're closer to people to civilization. And then Tuolumne Meadows was like off the hook with food. If you couldn't come out of there with like 10 days of resupply, you know, you're definitely eating too good. So yeah, I feel like those are good options if they are in a year where they're stocked up, they're resupplying, and they're open. And that's the thing that I checked. What do you got? What are your dates of being open? Any days that you're closed? What are your hours? Those kind of things, so I could get a feel whether that plan would work. And it did. And I think the other thing that helped us too, like with that 7 for 10 days, is that on the last day before we went into VVR, before we went into Red's Meadow, and before we went into Tuolumne Meadows on that, like what we would call the last day of hiking, we got there a lot of times at breakfast or at least for lunch. So literally, even though we had a full day of food for that day, we only used up our lunch that day. So that's not, you know, we were banking a day of food that day. So that's another thing that helped us too. So anyway, that's our unconventional resupply plan for the northbound John Muir Trail hike in 22 days, which is a pretty leisurely pace, as you can tell from the averages. And if you have any comments on that or any questions, certainly go ahead and comment down below. Hopefully that wasn't too long. That was like 22 minutes. Wow, that's a long video, Juan. But hopefully it'll help somebody that's doing a northbound think about what they're doing, think about how they can, you know, cut down on their cost of mailing food out, and on the weight of food that they're carrying while they're on trail. Again, don't do things that make you uncomfortable. You know, this is a calculated risk that I took. But the reality is that I actually, through the most remote parts of the trail, I had plenty of food on board for the remote parts of the trail. And so then when we got to the more populated parts of the trail with other options, that's where we started to be more flexible with our plan. So anyway, until next time, get out there, do some backpacking, some hiking, go see some cool stuff out there because there's lots of it. And I will see you on my next video.